How are you all? Hope you're well. Not got the whole Bennett crew in today in the health cave because our little Louis was up most of the night and kept the brothers and sisters awake. But I have got Jack and I have got Jesse with me. They're going to run today's show for us. God bless them. And dialing in today, we have some amazing guests. The topic today is natural ways to reduce anxiety, especially while we're keeping healthy in isolation. So that's anxiety is the big topic of the day. We're going to be joined by three amazing guests. Dr. Shan Hussein, a really good friend of mine, that when I was writing that section of the book, chapter 8, which is all about anxiety and what is happiness and depression and so on, he features more than any of all the doctors. So a gentleman that really knows his stuff when it comes to dealing with anxiety. And I hope you're well at home today. We'll get through all this together. And anyway, next guest after Dr. Shan is the founder of Purition. His name is Edward. He's got a great personal story, again, all around food for health, food for trying to minimize anxiety. Then we're going to hear from Victoria Fenton, who is a nutritional expert. She's absolutely brilliant. She's going to be dialing in from South Africa, so let's hope all that technology works. But before we get to our guests, a few questions overnight from you guys. So Leslie Taylor says, the main struggle I have with fasting is when I need to eat urgently and it's difficult to wait while I'm actually cooking. So what can I do to avoid the temptation? In other words, what she's saying is, look, when I'm actually cooking my meals, what can I actually do while I'm cooking it to avoid the temptation of snacking? I know exactly how you feel there, Leslie, because I went through the same thing myself. So Nina Teichels teaches us, and she's brilliant, Nina. She's an investigative journalist. She said, when you decide to go low carb, when you decide that you're going to start fasting, you need to prepare some things in advance, some healthy snacks. So good news is, if you don't know where to start with that, if you head over to Primal Living on Instagram, we have every single day ideas around recipes and ways of cooking different things that are 100% healthy. And every single day on Instagram at Primal Living, I think we've got the there we go, it's on the screen that way. It's always back to front like the weather. You can follow our inspiration on healthy snacks, healthy meals, even healthy desserts. And then if you head over to Primal Living's website, there's a blog page where all the recipes that are in the gourmet book that we wrote, we have now added every single recipe free of charge. You can buy the book because people still like the book. And remember, this is not for profit, so all the profits go to charity. But you can go to the website and all the meals are there. Because what we want you to do, and here's a bit of a challenge for everybody. In this time, while the restaurants are closed, while the McDonald's are closed, we have to change our eating habits anyway. So why don't you try and cook something new every single day? And then why don't you send us comments and questions to us and tell us how you got on with the new meals. Now, what we're also doing every day is we're revealing certain foods that you might be eating right now, what the effect on the blood glucose level is if you consume them. And yesterday's question was, what does a 30 gram, and believe it or not, that is 30 grams, and you tell me anybody that has a portion that small, I'd be gobsmacked. I know my Tom has 3 times, or used to have 3 times that in one go. But the question yesterday was, what is the effect on the blood glucose level of taking a small 30 gram of cornflake cereal in a bowl? And I asked you to guess it, and the closest was Barb, because Barb said, I'm going to guess that it's 9 teaspoons of sugar in a 30 gram serving. Well, she reckons it was 9. Actually, you were really close, because
last year, food banks in the Trussell Trust's network distributed almost 1.6 million 3-day
alternatives. Let's think about eggs. Eggs are just a fantastic way to start the day off. Think about Greek yogurts, whole Greek yogurts, not that low-fat, zero-fat rubbish, because that's really bad, but whole yogurts. Let's look at other things like salmon and so on and so forth. And that, my friends, that is how much that tiny little bowl of cornflakes turns into in your bloodstream. That is a no-no for breakfast. That's before you add sugar. That's before you add the milk. So we're going to do that every day. Tomorrow is going to be all about rice. Now, remember, we have 3 purposes with our daily show. First is to help you live healthier and to seize this moment with all those fast chains shut to change your eating habits for good. Second is we want to raise awareness for the fact that there is still hunger in our own country. We want to support the food banks through the Trussell Trust. We want to raise donations, awareness. We want to raise money and support for the food banks. And we're just going to play you a little video in a second. And we also, the third thing we're trying to do is look at what life will be like post the virus. What positive silver linings can we look forward to as we climb out of this situation we're in right now? So health, supporting those that don't have food, and then let's all together redefine what life should look like post the virus. But let me take you to a small clip now from the Trussell Trust.
Last year, food banks in the Trussell Trust's network distributed almost 1.6 million 3-day emergency food supplies to people in crisis. That's a 19% increase from the previous year and 73% more than what was distributed 5 years ago. The main reasons for people needing emergency food are benefits not covering the cost of living, or delays, or changes to benefits being paid. People are being pushed into poverty because there isn't enough money coming in to cover the costs of essentials. It's not right that anyone is forced to turn to a food bank as a result. We all have a responsibility to play a part in ending hunger and poverty in the UK. Together, we can make it happen. This can change.
So to make your donations to the Trussell Trust, just head over to justgiving.com. And what I've offered and what I will do is I'll match pound for pound your donations. And of course, if you're a UK taxpayer, you can get gift aid. So I worked the numbers out yesterday that if you could give £20, I know that's a lot of money, but if you could give £20 with your gift aid and my gift aid on top, I'll match that. Your £20 becomes £50. So really, really, we can do some great things together. Or also remember, you can donate via text if you so wish to do so. Right, let's talk about today's topic of anxiety, because we know anxiety and depression are real. They're real happening out there and have been for quite a long time. And anxiety right now, especially with the virus, is going to undoubtedly grow. Let me just recap and explain that anxiety and depression are kind of linked to the same thing. And there's a great quote by Lao Tzu. And what Lao Tzu says is, and this is simplifying everything, but I think it's a really good quote to think about. If you're depressed, then you're probably living in the past. You're clinging on to what's already happened. If you're anxious, you're worrying, you're living about the future. But to be at peace, we have to live in the presence. Now, that's a really interesting thought. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about this. And I wrote about this in the book. There is a difference between fact and fear. So, for example, right now, the fact is, what can we influence? Well, we can influence doing the things that we've been told to do, which is keeping our distance, staying at home, working from home where we can, keeping that 2-meter distance, washing our hands. As we're going to hear on the program, and as we have done for the last 2 days and moving forward, what you eat can have a massive difference on your strength and of your immune system, and to fight off and to really prepare yourself in case you do get COVID-19. So those are facts. Facts and fear are a different thing. Fear, I teach all my children, don't I children, if you can see me on camera 3, I teach my kids that fear is an acronym for false expectations appearing real. So, we can't deny the facts, and we can control those facts, do what we're told to do to stave off and reduce the risks and build our immune system if we do get it. That's the facts. But the fear, false expectations appearing real, is that really there are certain things we'll hear the horrific stories on TV, and they are happening. But if you look at the numbers, the percentages, and so on and so forth, if we do everything we can, let's not be over anxious, because you can't control the rest of it. Only worry and spend your time thinking about that which you can control, and don't spend too much time thinking about that you can't control, because that's what makes us anxious. Now, there's going to be a lot more coming on this throughout the hour. What we are also going to do in my book, Fat and Furious, which is available on Amazon. Also, you can get on Amazon as a book, you can get on Amazon as a Kindle version. We've dropped the price right down. Not for profit. All the profit from the book at the moment will be going to the Trussell Trust. So this is all about, again, helping the food banks. But free of charge, Chapter 8, which is all around this subject, we're going to give you completely free of charge. And the only way I can work out of getting it to everybody that's watching is to, if you subscribe to the email at Primal Living. So go to primalliving.com, say, yes, I'm happy for the email, and then tonight we'll email out everybody that we have an email address, Chapter 8, which has got 7 different tips and hints to reduce depression and reduce anxiety. Right, before I go on and on and on and on, because I could talk about this subject for hours, because it's a subject my children and I talk about lots and lots and lots. I want to get on the phone, if we can, a really good friend of mine, Dr. Shan Hussein. He's got a fabulous is the wrong word, but he's got a story to tell himself. He's very, very primal, but he's written a book. I'll get his book out as we get going. There it is. So this is Shan's book, The Big Prescription. And in here, he talks about the 3 pillars of health. And one of those is about mental health. So physical health, mental health, social health. I couldn't think of a better doctor to call onto the show than Dr. Shan Hussein. Shan, how are you, my friend? Good morning. Okay, we seem to be having technical difficulties with Shan. Okay, we'll come back to Dr. Shan in a moment, because he has frozen on our screen. Jack, if you can work on getting Dr. Shan, could we maybe go and speak to, or get a clip of Robert Lustig up? So Robert Lustig is going to, while we wait to get Shan, Robert Lustig is a great author. I'll show you his book in a moment. And he realizes there's a huge difference between pleasure and happiness. And here's his opinion on what we need to do to minimize depression by really understanding how to get to happiness.
Today, 4.4% of the entire world has been diagnosed with clinical depression. That's a 20% increase in a decade.
That's fine.
The question is, where does this come from? And, what are we going to do about it? My thesis in the book, and the reason I wrote the book, is because I believe that we as a society have lost track of these 2 positive emotions, pleasure and happiness. We think they're the same. We've been told they're the same. And I think we've been told they're the same by the people who want us to buy stuff to, quote, get happy, because they have something to sell. Hedonics sell. In fact, 4 out of the top 10 exports of the United States are hedonic substances: oil, corn, soy, sugar. So this is a gravy train. This is a juggernaut for the industries that are involved in selling them. And so they want us to buy them. So they tell us these things will make us happy. But pleasure and happiness are not the same. In fact, I would argue that they are diametrically opposite. They seem like they are related. They're both positive emotions. We like them both. So why should we care? Well, I'm going to give you 7 differences between pleasure and happiness that I outlined in the book, and then I'll explain to you why we should care. So, pleasure is short-lived, like a meal, for an hour and get over it. Happiness is long-lived, like for a lifetime. Pleasure is visceral, you feel it in your body. Happiness is ethereal, you feel it above the neck. Pleasure is taking, happiness is giving. Pleasure is experienced alone. Happiness is usually experienced in social groups. Pleasure is achievable with substances. Happiness is not achievable with substances, which of course is why those substances are there for us. The extremes of pleasure, whether it be substances or behaviors, and like I said, substances could be nicotine, cocaine, tobacco, alcohol, street drugs, heroin, morphine, sugar, or behaviors, shopping, gambling, internet, social media, pornography. In the extreme, all of these lead to addiction. So there's an aholic after every one of those. Shopaholic, sexaholic, chocoholic, alcoholic, etc., etc. But there's no such thing as being addicted to too much happiness. And then finally, number 7, and the reason I wrote the book, pleasure is dopamine, happiness is serotonin. So 2 different neurotransmitters in the brain, 2 different sets of receptors, 2 different mechanisms of action, 2 different regulatory pathways. These are not the same, 2 different areas of the brain where they work in. So why do we care? So what? They both feel good. And in fact, that's kind of what the public did. It was say, so what? Well, I think it matters a lot. And I think that one of the reasons we're in this boat is because we lost track of this.
That was the brilliant Dr. Robert Lustig. His book, Hacking the American Mind, could just as easily be hacking the British mind or the contemporary mind or anybody living in the modern world. A must read for all parents. Right, we do now have Dr. Shan Hussein with us. Dr. Shan, how are you this morning?
I'm very well, thanks. Really good to see you. I always enjoy hearing from Dr. Robert Lustig, and he's always a fantastic source of wisdom.
He is indeed. So how are you keeping and how are you bearing up, Doctor?
It's difficult at the moment. I'm going to just take this out because I'm getting a bit of an echo. So yes, I mean, it's very challenging at the moment with what's going on with the NHS and with the increasing demand we're seeing. But we've got a really good team. We're managing to ride our way through it. And, yes, things are going well, fortunately.
Good man, good man. Now, could you share with everybody your story? Because you've got obviously a very unique story. And then lead, if you can, I'm just going to shut up for a bit, but if you can tell us your story. And then in your book, you write brilliantly about the importance of mental health and well-being. Talk us through anxiety and things like that. And then maybe we'll have a bit of interaction and get some questions from the viewers.
Sure. So I've been a GP now for around 13 years, and it's been going very well. I did notice over time that we were increasingly seeing a lot of problems related to lifestyle measures, things that we were struggling to get on top of with regular medication. And so it made me sort of start to look into why that was happening. Why were we getting so many increasing numbers of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, cancers even? And I thought, well, clearly we're not really successful in managing this. What are we missing here as doctors? So I started to explore what was happening around health beyond pills and potions, and what we can do from a lifestyle point of view. Ultimately, it's not a genetic illness; it's got to be lifestyle. That's the way our phenotype is. So, what is the ultimate cause of this? Why do some people live to be over 100 and other people die in their 30s? And so I started exploring that. I thought, well, let me really look into it and put it together in a book and just put it out there. So it really came back to looking at health as defined by the World Health Organization 72 years ago as a state of complete physical and mental and social well-being, and what we can do to support each of those 3 areas to help us sustain our health and ultimately manage to hopefully get off some of the increasing number of medications we're prescribing at the moment.
And when it comes to mental well-being, talk to me if you can about links with food, what we drink, what we eat, the diet. How can that have an effect on mental well-being?
Okay, great question. Seem talked wonderfully about this on Monday, and it's always difficult to follow. Like a team, I don't really have much to say in addition to what he's already told us. The way I look at diet is very straightforward, and it comes down to whole foods, natural foods, what we're supposed to eat, cutting back on things that we know are not good for us, packaged, processed stuff, high carbohydrate rich foods that, we're not really designed to assimilate, or they're not designed to sustain us. We should really be looking at, responsibly sourced foods initially, avoiding all the chemicals that are unfortunately added to them, vegetables, salads, fruits, legumes, nuts, seeds, meat, fish, responsibly sourced, of course. They're the main things, and really trying to cut out all the stuff that we know is not good for us, and also avoiding stimulants. At this time, we're seeing a lot of heightened anxiety, which is completely understandable. And obviously, if we're living on high doses of caffeine or alcohol every day, that's not going to do our emotional well-being any good at all.
That's a very, very good point. We've just had a question in on YouTube from GBiz. A lot of people with anxiety can't help overthinking. And that's a really interesting one, isn't it? How do we help people from overthinking with the anxiety? I suppose I touched on it a moment ago, saying that there's a difference between facts and fear, and you keep thinking about the facts by all means, but don't get into that fear element of false expectations appearing real. Really try and just worry about things you can control, as in what steps can you do to best look after yourself, and then if you're doing all that, try and chill out a bit.
Yes, overthinking is something that is very dangerous. It can have quite a devastating effect. I believe it's actually a silent killer. And it's important to help us detach from such behaviors and recognize what the damage can be from overthinking. Now, I don't claim to have all the answers on this, and I'll admit I've been guilty of overthinking myself. We've got to remember that what we're going through right now is unprecedented. I know a lot of people are overusing that word perhaps, but one could actually say that it's almost normal to feel a little bit anxious or apprehensive about where we are and what things are going to happen in the future. But we can't really control all of that. What we can do is control our response to what's going on. And, what can we reasonably do from the safety of our homes to preserve our own health and also keep others safe? So, everyone knows about hand washing and social isolation, social distancing, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, if that's okay.
Yeah,
but what else can we do? Can we check in on others? Can we look at how we can offer support for other people? Can we help to give some reassurance that, we're all in this together? And one of the great things I've seen from this crisis is that people are coming together, not literally, but making other people aware that they are available if there is help that is needed out there. Just touching back on what I said a moment ago, there's a lot of talk about social isolation and social distancing. I think this should actually be rephrased, and we should be calling it what it is, which is physical isolation and distancing. And excuse me 1 second, sorry.
Shani is an active GP, so if he has to jump off and get the phone, we'll all understand why. But very, very good point there, that what Shani's talking about is actual physical distancing. Are you back with us, Shan?
I am, yes.
Cool.
Apologies for that.
That's all right, no problem.
But yes, it's a case of, we can still be social. You and I being social right now, we can be social with our neighborhoods over the fence and talk from a safe distance. We can make sure that our families are safe and secure, and we're connecting with them on a regular basis through these other means, through Skype or Zoom or whatever particular software you prefer. There are many brands out there. And we've got to remember that we are social beings. And if we look at history and how we've survived times of difficulty, it's always been through social unity. So we really mustn't lose sight of that.
That's a really, really good point. Now, I'm going to put a question to you that's on YouTube. I know doctors can't really answer questions from a distance, so don't feel under any pressure to break the guidelines. But Georgia has asked, what is your take on antidepressants versus tackling depression through food and balancing hormones?
Great question. I think it's very much dependent on the case and whether antidepressants are indicated. And we've always got to remember that antidepressants on their own are seldom, if ever, the answer to managing depression. We've got to look at things much more broadly in terms of what the contributing factors are to depression and what we can do to help them. Are we looking at someone's past history and what they've been through and what they've experienced and how they're managing or interpreting that, or is there a dietary component, is there a stress element to it? And bringing all of that together is very important, and that really needs the support and guidance from a qualified healthcare practitioner such as your GP, and really working together with appropriate help out there, whether it's through counselling or therapists, but also looking at what lifestyle measures can be taken. And so I think it's just it's a piece of the puzzle potentially in some cases. Antidepressants, as we know, they're only effective in severe cases of depression. And, other than that, they can potentially cause some side effects. So it's important that we balance the risks versus the benefits. Having said that, if anyone is on antidepressants at the moment, do not stop taking them without taking appropriate medical advice from your doctor, please.
Thank you. Very, very good indeed. So in my book, I talked about the 7 ways to try and minimize depression, anxiety, and so on. And I think you just covered a couple of those, and most of this section of the book was written with your assistance. So family and friends, although we're social distancing from a sort of physical contact, everything you can to stay in touch at this time more than ever is the most important thing. And when I looked at the blue zones around the world, and we visited Ikaria, which is one of the places where more people live over 100 years old, that socializing is so important for longevity and mental wellness. So everything you can to stay connected in this difficult time is important. We will be sending everybody this chapter completely free if we have your email address. Challenges and purpose. What's your view at the moment that, so if we're just sitting at home and we're used to going out, we're used to going to work, and now we're at home, it's so easy if we haven't got something to do to then the mind wanders, the mind races. Would you agree that maybe right now, try and find a new hobby, maybe get some more books, maybe become a bookworm, maybe hopefully start to become a chef at home, start to experiment with food, try and get into something. So, because once I always say to my children, as long as it's legal and doesn't affect anybody else in a negative way, I just want you to get into something, because when you're into something, your brain really begins to focus on what your new hobby is or your new interest is. Do you have a view on that sort of, use this time at home to find something new to get excited about?
100% agree. Yes, creativity is very important, and engagement, healthy engagement with pastimes or whatever they might be, can keep us occupied, to stop us from going mad, but also it can be very productive. And my family and I were looking at what we can do together, individually as well, to be more creative and to spend some more time engaging in hobbies, reading books, and I think this is. Yes, granted, this is a very, very difficult time, and we've really got to find ways to make it as least stressful as possible to help manage, our emotional well-being and help to curb the anxiety that many of us will be feeling at the moment.
That's so true. It's great what you said about your family. My family sitting over here, what would we have been doing for this 3 months off without doing this? Jesse and Jat, they've learned how to edit shows, prepare shows, just give them something different to really focus in on. So when the show finishes today, they'll be working on tomorrow's show. And also, of course, their schoolwork before anybody complains. They've still got to do their schoolwork and Jackie's university work. Shannon, one final question I've got for you. It's just come in from Poppy, who was with us yesterday. Without being able to see people face to face, we've covered a few of these, but what are your top tips of staying connected? So you mentioned over the garden fence is okay, but at a distance. Any other great tips that you've got?
Yes, and just looking at how we can connect with each other remotely. I would say, be cautious on social media. I've seen some really awful things on social media today about conspiracy theories, etc. That can really, really mess with you if you're not careful. Just associating connecting with people who can help to lift your spirits, to help you feel a little bit better about how things are going, and also doing what you can to help lift other people's spirits can make a massive difference to our overall well-being. So yes, just looking at ways that we can connect without actually being physically in contact with people is a really key part of how we're going to overcome this.
And in fact, isn't every day a school day, Shan? Because I'm sitting here talking to you, noticing that I've got this ticker tape on, which is the news. It's got to come off, because at the end of the day, do what you can do and follow what the guidance is, which is the social distancing, wash your hands, build your immune system, but then try and come away from the news a little bit, because there is a lot of, it is real, it is really happening, but you can become so fearful that if you're doing everything you can control, only worry about what you can control, and let's maybe avoid the news a little bit, because that's going to make us so much more anxious if we're constantly looking at the news, hearing the stats. Do what you can do to control it, and then get into a hobby, get into something new, start reading books. Let's look at the positives, not the negatives. Jack, we've got to take that ticker tape off as soon as we can. And in fact, it's probably going to come off in the next minute or so. Shan, as always, an absolute pleasure. Stay safe. Well done to everyone in the NHS. You're doing a fantastic, fantastic job. And can we have you back on sometime next week?
I'd be delighted to, yes, absolutely.
That's fantastic. Everybody, that was the incredible Shan Hussain, Dr. Shan, a practicing GP out there in Nottingham. This is his book, The Big Prescription. It's actually not about prescription. If anything, it's about de-prescribing. It's about doing everything you can around, and it's the most on-topic book of all at the moment, although there's a new one coming out, I'm going to tell you about in a second, which is going to be amazing. This is really on topic. It is basically looking at the World Health Organization, something they quoted some 60, 70 years ago, that good health is physical health, mental health, and social health. So staying social with people are the three things you've got to look at for longevity and happiness and so on. Let me come back and just remind everybody, this is partially about, it's all about how we can give some advice, but also it's about raising money for the food banks across the UK. The food banks across the UK at the moment facing a really difficult time, because as you could understand, not so many people dropping off the donations in the supermarkets. And I plead with you, next time you go to the supermarket, do put in the canned fish, the canned peas, the canned fruits, the canned vegetables into those donation boxes, because the country really needs you. We still have 2% of households in the UK that rely on the food bank. So if you could head over to Just Giving or use the text number, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. In fact, let's go and find out a little bit more from the food banks, and then we'll be back with another fantastic guest.
Food bank isn't only about food. Food bank is also about meeting new friends, getting to know people. I was a care support worker in the Northern Trust. I have 3 children, ages from 23, 16 and 6. Last April, it was around Easter time, I unfortunately took 2 TIA strokes. I did spend a time in hospital to come out to discover that I couldn't go back to my work. I also didn't get any sick pay through my work because I was a bank staff nurse or bank nurse. There was food in the cupboard. We had some food in the freezer, but I knew it was starting to get low and low and low. Things were just starting to get on top of me because I just wasn't doing what I should have been doing as a mother, and felt kind of down on it. I was getting benefits as well, but I was even struggling in those. I decided it was either go and ask somebody for a lend of money and have that debt and struggle, or go to the food bank. So I decided I would opt for the food bank. Driving in, I sat in the car park for about 5, maybe 10 minutes, getting the courage to go in, and the welcome that I got through the doors was just phenomenal. They offered me tea, coffee. They didn't go full in on me, what's wrong or what have you. It was totally so nice, so family based. The girls helped me with what food I needed for the kids, which was that was my importance, was the children. Coming here was just a great relief. nobody judges anybody. I found that Jenny was fit to give me some information on any benefits that maybe I was entitled to that I wasn't getting. Just showing me the road that maybe I could go down and get more help, which was very good. Left with my bags and my food and just felt very overwhelmed. I think I just cried. Just a good feeling. Yeah, I was so glad I come here. Because of me not working anymore, I decided I'm going to join. So I now am a volunteer for the food bank. I still struggle a little, but things are definitely well balanced out now. So no, I'm not needing the food bank anymore, but I'm glad it was there when I needed the help.
So we really need to help support the Trussell Trust. Real life stories are only heartwarming. If you can, add food to those boxes in your supermarkets. That will be greatly, greatly appreciated. We need them now more than ever. And if you can make donations to Just Giving, it would be really gratefully appreciated. Now, in a moment, we're going to go and speak to Edward from a company called Fruition. Before we do that, let me just talk about the link between food, anxiety, food, and depression. The Harvard Medical School say, think about it this way. It takes your brain to keep you alive 24/7, breathing, your heartbeats, your senses. Even when you're asleep, your brain is in operation 24/7. And it says, like an expensive car, your brain functions best when it gets only premium fuel. Eating high quality foods that contain lots of vitamins, minerals and antioxidants nourishes the brain and protects it from oxidative stress. So it's just like a car, the brain, and if we want to cut down on depression and anxiety, food can make a huge, huge difference. So let's go and hear from an expert on food. Edward, are you with us this morning?
I am indeed. How are you?
Very, very good. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thanks.
So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your company, and we first met at Real Food Rocks, didn't we, last year, which is a great, great event, which I sadly don't think will be on this show with what's happening, but Real Food Rocks was brilliant. It's where all the companies like yours come together to promote real foods.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at Fruition, you can see I'm at the office. We're producing 50,000 meals a day here, or a week rather, that ship out the door, supporting customers who are looking to eat healthily. So Fruition, here at Fruition, we make it's alternatives to protein shakes and meal replacement products, but using only real food ingredients. So lots of our customers are working from home, supporting lots of key workers out there with our healthy food that we're continuing to deliver.
And your products, just for those that don't know the products, you basically replace cereals with produce, where a lot of it, so it comes in a bag. If one of my kids can run upstairs and get some, because we've got them at home, they're absolutely fantastic. But basically, you're taking nuts, seeds, and a lot of them grown in the UK. And you tell the product better than me, so go.
Well, okay, so instead of using highly refined powders that you often find in sort of meal replacement shakes or protein shakes, or even just very, very quick, ready to go breakfast, we use simply ground seeds and nuts. And we've been doing this for about 4 years. And as you rightly said, we met at Real Food Rocks, and that's what we're all about. We're about real food, so replacing ultra processed food with real foods, and not using refined ingredients, not using flavorings, gums, fillers, thickeners. These are real passions in my life about showing people what real actually is, because there's so many kind of fake foods out there, ultra processed foods that are made to be hyper palatable, and we want to go taking products like ours back to their roots and just seeds and nuts.
Because it's changed a lot, hasn't it? Go back 100 years ago, all we ate was pretty much real foods, and Asim Malhotra was on this week, said that pretty much half the British diet now is fake foods. And here we have, my daughter's walked in, so here's one of your products that we have at home. We've got your macadamia and vanilla product at home.
Yeah,
and you know, my kids, some days they'll fast and not have something before school. My daughter just bought me this. She's big with her eggs and her omelettes. But other days when she's had too many eggs, too many omelettes, this is a staple diet for them all. Talk us through, so we've changed our diet in the last 100 years, and certainly according to all the research from doctors, you know, depression, anxiety has just gone through the roof. And talk us through what you believe is maybe the connection with all those hidden sugars and all the hidden chemicals, and you know, how do we think this is affecting the brain and depression and anxiety?
I mean, I can only talk from a personal point of view. You know, I got into this business because we couldn't find products out there that were natural, that fitted with our own, you know, with our own dietary kind of ideals. Because I guess when I was 40, I used to when I was 40, it was about 6 years ago. I traveled the world a lot, and I was working at a desk job, in a sales role. I was sat behind my desk, or I was traveling around the world, and I put on a lot of weight. I was falling asleep after every meal, but I thought that I had an amazing diet. You know, all the food was, you know, top quality. Everything was made at home. But it was just carbohydrates for breakfast, carbohydrates for lunch, and carbohydrates for supper. And you know, I found myself in age 40, I couldn't run 250 meters to catch a bus, or you know, or to keep up with the kids. I was in a bad place mentally, as you know, as well. You know, constant headaches, all that kind of stuff. Possibly. And not drinking excessively, but drinking every day was part of the normal routine, as was drinking lots of coffee during the day, or tea and coffee. And yeah, I got to the stage where, you know, I was done. Age 40, I was creaking, feeling like an old man. And something had to change. And locally here in Shrewsbury, where we're from, I met a guy a personal trainer who put me on this sort of low carb, real food path. And, you know, the results were incredible. You know, in the space of 6 months, probably maximum 12 months, I lost 3 stone in weight. I've got the energy of a 20-something-year-old. And, you know, I've continued to live that life ever since, and it included stopping doing what I was doing and looking for opportunities to try and, you know, further this passion that I gained for real food, and that included, you know, changing my jobs and setting up Purition.
Brilliant. And you look brilliant, by the way. So you don't look like a guy that a few years ago was creaking. But then again, I was obese a few years ago, and Tom Watson was obese a few years ago, and we all went on the same journey. Question just come in from Sam. Isn't cereals widely known to be a healthy breakfast or snack? Blow the lid on cereals for me, Sam. Well, I think I blew it a little bit earlier on by saying a 30-gram serving of cornflakes turns into 8 grams of sugar inside the bloodstream, with the same effect on the glucose level in the bloodstream of 8 cubes of sugar. So I blew it a little bit, but Sam says, blow it even more then. So tell us the truth about cereals.
You know, often with cereals, that, you know, all over the packaging, made from whole grains, fortified with, you know, X, Y, and Z, vitamins and minerals. But really, the truth is that cereals and grains are inedible unless they are ultra processed. And that's the truth. That's the truth about cereals and grains. Unless they are refined, they are actually inedible. Most of them are actually inedible to humans. And actually, all that is left after refining is the energy, okay? Which is the sugar, which is the carbohydrate, which is broken down into simple sugars. And that's why they're so problematic in the diet. There is nothing whole food there is nothing whole grain about any highly processed cereal. And it's really disingenuous, but for most of the packaging is downright lies, quite frankly.
Downright lies on packaging. I couldn't agree with you more. Harvard Medical School say that multiple studies have found a correlation between a diet high in refined sugars, which is what we're talking about, breakfast cereals, and impaired brain function, and even a worsening of symptoms of mood disorder such as depression. So there you have it. You have it from Harvard Medical School that, you know, the cereals and anything full of sugar or turns into sugar inside the body, and what your product does, that's why my family have it, you're taking, and wherever possibly, I've read that you take it from the UK sources, taking nuts, taking grains, and not so much grains, but nuts and seeds that are full of vitamins, full of minerals, full of nutrition, and as I said earlier on from the Harvard Business School, you know, your brain is working 24/7. It's like an engine of a car. If you feed it rubbish fuel, you'll get rubbish outputs. If you feed it quality food like your cereals, well, not cereals, let's get this right, your alternative cereals, then the brain will function and mood should lift and mood should improve. So yeah, fascinating.
And it's also quite incredible that when you're fueling yourself with the right kind of fuel, especially seeds and nuts, which are very energy dense, with lots of high quality fats, and they're high quality precisely because they're filled with vitamins and minerals. That just how little food in terms of weight that you actually need to keep you satisfied.
Sure.
So, for instance, most of the people here at Purition who use the product, it's not everybody, it's not for everybody, but they will often fast till 11:30, and then they'll have 40 grams or 50 grams of Purition, which is essentially mainly, seeds and nuts. And that will keep them going for 5 or 6 hours. And, so that's less than sort of 10 grams an hour. We talked about the car and fuel efficiency and things earlier. I think when you're feeding yourself with the right foods and fueling yourself with fats instead of sugars, the efficiency of the human body it blows my mind every time.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been a pleasure having you show. Will you come back in coming weeks? We're going to be doing this every day for months, I think, while we're locked down in the health bunker. It's been fascinating having you on, Ed. Will you come back again?
Yes, sure, no problem.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. And everybody, Ed's sort of breakfast replacement, but with real food, is called Purition. Right, we are going to go straight to our next guest. Is our next guest with us, Jack? Yes. She is, great. We have the wonderful Victoria Fenton on the line, who's a nutritional expert, and she's coming in all the way, I think, are you in South Africa today?
I am in South Africa today, yeah. Yes. Fingers crossed it works.
It's working brilliantly. We've got a really clear signal with you. So how are you?
I'm well, I think. Yeah, it's all a bit strange times at the moment, but I think we're all pulling together as best we can. So yeah, I think I'm okay.
So let's start then, Victoria. Tell everybody about your own health journey and sort of what brought you to this point.
So my health journey is very long, so I will try to make this very short. But ultimately, I got very unwell when I was 17, and for 8 years went without a diagnosis. A long story later, I eventually got a diagnosis of a genetic connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, along with a couple of other comorbidities or coexisting conditions. So one of those was a postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and another one was mast cell activation syndrome. So within all of those, I was very unwell for a long time. And I thought my diagnoses and my labels would be freedom, and I'd get solutions and medical help. And it just kind of wasn't the way it worked. There's very few solutions, particularly from a drug model, for those kinds of conditions. They're very much management only sort of strategy. So I, being me, kind of embarked on my own intense journey into nutrition, naturopathy, functional medicine, systems biology, and came up with a whole mixture of skills and services that I now give to people not only in that kind of connective tissue world, but I serve wide populations from complex chronic illness all the way through to health optimization and biohacking.
Wow. Fascinating. You took into your own hands your own condition. It's what I teach my children. If it's to be, it's up to me. And you've really helped. I mean, you look fantastic. You look really healthy right now. So well done indeed for taking control of your own situation. How important is food to our physical and our mental health, do you think?
It's what you make your entire body out of. So the way you nourish yourself is not only a literal or almost chemical equation, like you're making your own cells out of the quality and the nutrient levels in the food that you eat. But also there's a huge emotional component to food, and there's a huge restorative social element. It's difficult at the moment, but you can, there's ways to make it work. But food is really important. It's important to our physical well-being, but also our emotional and mental well-being.
Yeah, we had a doctor on the other day, and he said, you have to understand this. If people are just having cereals and bread for breakfast, and then pasta for lunch with again, chemically enhanced sauces, and then if in the evening they're going straight for the pizza, so you've got bread, you've got very low vitamins and minerals, and if there are 13 vitamins and 14 minerals we need every day to keep the brain optimized, then there must be a real link with anxiety and depression and food choices. And maybe the first step people have got to do is to start looking at maybe real foods and just see if the byproduct of sort of physical wellness, maybe the byproduct could also be mental wellness.
Absolutely. I think it's a very good point to make that the body and the brain aren't separate. So they're part of the same unit. So what nourishes the body will nourish the brain. Within our profession, we have to be incredibly careful that we don't start insisting that food is the problem all the time, because oftentimes these situations are complex and there's a lot of elements involved. But I always approach it from a foundation is, something that you do at least several times a day. You have to have a relationship with food. You have to choose what you nourish yourself with. And it is one of those things that we can have control over. And I think in situations like we're in at the moment, having control over something is really, really, really important, almost as a mindset thing, way more than what you're actually choosing, whether you're choosing whole food, plant-based, vegan stuff, or whole food, very, very healthy meats and fish and all of that kind of things. It's an empowering thing to be able to say, I'm actively making this choice to nourish my body and brain and spirit in this way.
No, that's really, really powerful and a really good thought, because isn't it interesting that for probably the first time in 50 years, we're having to change the way we eat because the restaurants are shut, certainly in the UK, McDonald's are closer. We're having to make a change to what we eat. So maybe it's time to even start thinking about cooking different things at home. And that's why we've just put our entire cookbook for free on our website right now, because we want to inspire people to try something different.
Absolutely. I mean, trying different things, teaching yourself a skill. If you can't cook, this is the perfect time. I do need to be very, very clear that food is emotional. So there is going to be a lot of complicated feelings about nutrition at this moment in time, as we're all going through something that Dr. Chan said earlier, it's unprecedented, these words that we just have no idea what the next few months are going to hold. So we need to make sure as professionals that we're not insisting that everybody eat perfectly all the time. There has to be a bit of flex within it. And this, we're talking about food banks. We're talking about maybe tinned foods and packets of biscuits I heard the other day were being put into care packages. There is nothing wrong with having foods that are actually supportive to the physiology, because sometimes calories are just calories and we do need to be nourished. If you can do more and you do want to learn a new skill, or you have the means and the bandwidth, excellent, that's absolutely amazing. But we don't need to get into kind of food demonization at this moment in time. And even I want some dark chocolate in my cupboard at the moment because life's stressful. Like, I'm in the middle of South Africa and it's a very different lockdown here. And it's interesting because they banned alcohol and cigarette sales. So they're obviously trying to regulate certain stimulants, as Dr. Chan was saying. There's interesting nuances and differences. But we need to make sure that our relationship with our nutrition is, yes, it has to nourish us, but that's also emotionally and mentally. And, you know, sometimes having the custard creams, I think is what it was, is exactly the right thing. But within the context of an overall balanced diet. And when there's foodstuffs like Purition on the market, which I love and I recommend to my patients all the time, we can do these things. And this time is the perfect time for people to start thinking more broadly, investigating what they can do within their own means.
So I think what you're saying is, don't become more anxious because we're saying make loads of food choices all in one go. See if you can maybe make some small steps, baby steps, you know, little small increments, and still have maybe some of your things that make you happy, because we need to be happy at the moment. And therefore, don't beat yourself up if you're still having stuff that we're telling you isn't really that good for you. Make little changes, any small step you can make, and don't rush out and do it all in one go if that leaves you feeling even more anxious.
Completely. There's no reason to make food and nutrition a whole raft of a to-do list that's going to completely stress you out, because it would completely defeat the object of eating healthy food. So just start with one thing. And the one thing that I would say to people is, if you're not drinking enough water, start there. So you don't have to buy it, it comes out of tap. Just start with the really simple things. But it's a really good psychological mind tool to start actually meaning that you're actively doing something regularly throughout the day, which is a health promoting activity. And from there, things tend to snowball.
That's a really, really good point. And where are you locked down in South Africa? Whereabout are you?
I'm in, actually, it's beautiful. I'm in Camps Bay, Cape Town. So I'm very lucky to be where I am. And, you know, I was moving out here anyway, but it's all just happened rather chaotically. And yeah, I can see the sea. So I'm very lucky. I can't walk along it because we're not allowed to go outside for exercise, but it's there. So.
In fact, Samuel has just asked that question. Victoria, how are you dealing with lockdown in South Africa? So how are you dealing with it? You can't go on the beaches?
It's interesting. Every country is doing this very differently, and I have patients all across the world, so I'm kind of having to keep track of it all. It's very severe, and they've stopped everything very early. But I'm in the first world population of what is essentially a third world country. So I'm very mindful of the fact that I'm not in a township. I'm not in somewhere where I can't access sanitization, hand washing, all of that kind of stuff. It's a huge privilege to be able to witness it here, because you just can't complain about lockdown when I can pop to the shops if I need to and come back and wash my hands and I have my space. Whereas populations literally a few miles down the road don't have that luxury. So it's an interesting exercise in perspective, actually.
That's really interesting. Just have one question, and then we'll let you get on and serve the world and make everybody healthy. From Poppy has said, how important is sleep for our mental health?
Oh, so important. Yeah, it's number one priority. It's number one priority because we tend to stress if we think we haven't slept enough. It's fundamental. So it also gives us the capacity to make better decisions, healthier decisions. It gives us the capacity to think more clearly, and sleep it's immune boosting. It offsets a lot of inflammation. It detoxifies. There's just so much that sleep does. So yes, focus on sleep, definitely.
That's been absolutely fascinating. Hopefully you'll come back and join us at some stage during the weeks, because I think we're all going to be locked down in the health bunker for a while. And thank you very, very much for joining us this morning, Victoria. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
Wasn't she wonderful? Some great advice there. So I think what I learned from that is, because I like to obviously preach, get your food sorted out, take this as an opportunity to change everything. I think what Victoria's just pointed out, it's a really good thing around mindfulness, is maybe don't try and do everything at once, because the last thing we want to leave you doing at the moment is feeling less happy. And if something makes you happy right now, then still maybe keep doing that. But let's see what tweaks we can make and small improvements we can make for you. Do join us every day here at the Food Bank Show. Keep your donations going in if you can to Just Giving. Keep dropping food off into those boxes for us, and do remember, and I'll finish on this piece, and it's from the book. And don't forget, if you leave your email address at primalliving.com today, we'll send you the entire chapter for free out of the book around mental wellness, being happy, and so on and so forth. In fact, two more things I must do. I've got one more question that came in. Carol wants to, where in France can you buy the product? Not sure, Carol. We will find out for you. And we had another one. Georgia says, do you believe that clinical depression is reversible in the same way as something like diabetes? First thing I have to point out, Georgia, I'm not a doctor. What I will say is that there are many pieces of research that point to the fact that we're not giving the brain the nutrition it needs at the moment. The UK diet and the SAD diet, which means standard American diet, pretty sad at the moment. In America, they've only got 17% of people that are metabolically healthy. 17%, that means 83%. Over 4 out of 5 are unmetabolically well. And being metabolically well is one of the best ways to defend your immune system against COVID. So, but I've got doctors that will tell you in the reports that we aren't giving the food the brain needs. We are not giving it enough B vitamins. We're not giving it enough C vitamins. We're not giving it enough omega-3s. And you are what you eat at the end of the day. And let's think about this for one moment as well. What do we talk about? We get the butterflies in the stomach. We get a gut feeling. And there is this superhighway from our gut to our brain. And in fact, 2,000 years ago, Hippocrates said that all illnesses start in the brain. Well, that's not strictly true, not all, but a good majority too. So we need to look after our gut will look after our brain. Eating nutritionally rich, natural foods is a great way to build up your defense system. Now, tomorrow's quiz, and we'll put it up for everyone to have a look at. How much rice, I need to check what the measurement is. Let me just have a look. In a bowl of rice, if you've got my book, no cheating, you can't take part. But those that haven't got the book, if you were to take a small bowl of rice, and we are talking about having 150 grams of rice, when you digest that, what's the equivalent in sugar cubes? How many sugar cubes equivalent does that turn into in the bloodstream of your body? And the question again, 150 grams, let's say basmati rice, what's the equivalent on the bloodstream? We'll answer the question tomorrow. Put your questions, if you can, on the comment section of YouTube, as many questions as we can, and we'll answer that tomorrow, and we'll show you some great alternatives that you could be cooking instead of rice. For now, stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow.